Well, here we are on another Mormon Truth video in the Mormon Truth video library on the Dodger Game channel. Going to get back to an especially for youth uh, session here, learning about the gospel. In our last especially for youth ones, we were learning about understanding hidden LDS history and the changing doctrines of Mormonism. Now, actually this time, we're going to get to take a look at the Bible. The creation story is where we're going to start. What do Mormons believe about the creation? Did it really happen in 6 days? That's a little ridiculous, isn't it? Well, Peter tried to make it sound a little bit better. In the second epistle of Peter, so that's 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, he tries to make things a little more real for the saints in his day. He says, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day." Now, the context here doesn't happen to be actually talking about the creation. However, it seems to be talking about the Lord isn't lagging concerning his promises. They seem to think they were in the latter days at that time, actually. But let's get into Genesis now and see exactly what does Genesis have to say about all this business. So let's flip over here. Is this creation reasonable here? So here we got Genesis chapter 1. And we start off with, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was out without form and void," and so forth. "Spirit of God moved upon the waters, and God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Okay, and he thought that was good, so that's day number 1. So according to what Peter's saying, then maybe that's 1,000 years. And then God said, well, let's divide, use the firmament to divide up the waters from the water. So they do that. Then on the next day, the third day, after they've gathered the waters into one place, they or he, it's God. In Book of Abraham, it's the gods. What do we see? So they got the seas, and then the earth is prepared to bring forth grass, herbs, fruit trees, all that good kind of stuff on day number 3. So this is all about creating this earth. Wasn't there any light before then? Well then, so God creates light, then he creates this earth, it says. And then, after he's got things ready for all sorts of vegetation, day number 4 it says, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. "And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, to divide the light from the darkness." And that's the end of day 4. So it kind of sounds to me like the first 3 days were spent making this earth, and then the sun and the moon and the stars. Now the stars, there are trillions of stars. So this one earth encompasses about 5 days of creation. And the rest of the stars in the universe are done like during day 4. Unless somehow those stars were not created on that day, according to this. Now, if you've got the universe model in your mind and you're thinking of trillions of stars, as we believe they are, as we are taught, well, this seems like some primitive person coming up with a myth to explain everything based around this world. It just doesn't seem to make sense. There are people that seem to think it makes sense, though. People who think everything was just created around this world. Those people don't believe this world is round. They believe this world is flat. Perhaps I should put in some things from one of their videos. I've only taken a look at a couple. We're supposed to consider people like that nutty, but then again, we're supposed to consider people nutty according to the media that tell us things that turn out to be true with regard to who's running society. If someone like Bill O'Reilly on Fox News says people are nuts if they say something, it's almost a sure sign that it's probably got something true to it. So maybe I'll run a little bit of that in there. As if you look at your line of sight, it doesn't quite work out with what we're told with the curvature of the earth. Neither do flight patterns for airlines. Anyway, some interesting things to think about. Because if Mormons believe that the rest of the universe was created in the middle of day 4, They're almost as bad as Ben Carson, who said that the pyramids were built by Joseph of Egypt to avoid the famine. Pyramids take a lot longer than 7 years to build, Ben, and they're not that hollow. So why would you have everybody busy building pyramids when they needed to be growing grain and using the grain that you did have to make beer for your workers? Well, that's a tough one, isn't it? Better look at neurosurgery.
Surface. Most, if not all, ancient civilizations knew that the Earth was flat. The people of today would say that ancient cultures were ignorant, yet they accomplished great feats that we still can't accomplish to this day. The truth is that they had real knowledge, and some of us only have an education. But what is an education? Education is when you are told what to think and how to think. Those that are able to remember and regurgitate what they've been told on command are considered well educated. But there is a big difference between being educated and being intelligent. Just because you believe what you've been told doesn't make it true. In fact, the flat versus spherical Earth is a debate that has never really died. It's been raging for centuries. It was a huge argument as recently as the early and mid-1900s, but with programs like NASA, founded in 1958, the latter half of the 20th century was a win for the spherical Earth. It wasn't a question for the average person anymore. Though at the time the shape of the Earth was still up to be proven, NASA claims that they went to the moon and captured a shot of the spherical Earth, as if they always knew it was indeed spherical.
Those of you who think this technical difficulty was planned and think I'm scamming you, go do it for yourself. Because you're going to find the exact same thing. I got nothing to hide here. This is live on the air, okay? I'm going to zoom in on the Earth in Photoshop. You see the Earth? To image, adjust, levels, and I'm going to bring the levels over here. And I'm going to bring the levels up. Uh-oh. What is that? Why is there a square box around the Earth allegedly taken from the scientists on the moon in Apollo 17? People wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. I mean, they're always out there saying, you know, everybody's trying to show you stuff from space, and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars. You know.
What are some of the basic observations someone can make to ascertain that the Earth is neither a globe or spinning?
We've been taught that we're on a ball spinning around the sun, and so to hear that you might be on a flat plane, motionless at the center of the universe with all the celestial bodies spinning around you, just as...
Looking at this shot, it reminds me of being in a planetarium where the stars are projected on the ceiling.
It appears actually comes as a surprise, but it shouldn't, because our eyes, experience, and common sense all tell us that the horizon is perfectly flat, and we feel motionless. We don't hear ourselves whizzing by at thousands of miles per hour. No matter how high amateur rockets or balloons have gone up, the horizon rises to the eye of the observer all the way up, and that's only consistent with a flat plane. Their theory just gets more and more wild as time has gone on. And so, yeah, it began with the spinning Earth going 1,000 miles per hour, which is then circling around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, which then they decided the sun wasn't a heliocentric model, but more of an acentric model, where they don't know where the center is, and we're just exploding out of a big bang. So the sun, we're spinning around the sun, and then the sun and us are spinning around the Milky Way galaxy, they say, at 500,000 miles per hour. And then the entire Milky Way galaxy, they say, is shooting off from the Big Bang at 670 million miles per hour, almost the speed of light. So there's at least 4 rip-raging, contradictory motions supposedly going at all times, yet you don't experience any of it, nor can you measure any of it using the stars. The flat motionless Earth, not only is it the greatest conspiracy of all, it's also the easiest to prove. I mean, it just is flat and motionless, just as it appears. Look into it more and more, make it a thing to try and debunk it, if you will. You know, even if you want to do it that way. Negative reinforcement works too. Try as you will, you're only going to find proofs for the flat motionless Earth. You're not going to confirm that you're on a spinning ball.
The curvature of the Earth eludes us. Either the Earth is much larger in circumference than we are told, or the curve just doesn't exist. People assume that there is a curve, but it's never really been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Cameras with fisheye lenses, Hollywood movies, and NASA CGI are the closest we get to seeing curvature.
The deception and the lies are just so pervasive, and they're just so deep that I swear it gives me a headache.
The surface of water is always level. This is just natural physics. We know this, that water, if unobstructed and uncontained, will flow outwards, finding the easiest course to maintain its own level, right? So, but the ball earth model claims that the oceans are huge 100-mile walls of curved water curving around the ball. That's ridiculous. They say that gravity makes this possible, but you don't see that. You go to the beach, you see completely flat horizon, you see water just ever so gently coming up on the shore.
So there's the pretty blue marble that NASA claims we are living on, with circumference of 24,901 and 3959 radius. So to find the curvature, you take 8 inches times your distance squared. That's 8 inches times your distance squared, and if you don't square the distance, you end up with this, and this is not what NASA has shown us. They have given us a beautiful blue marble that we love. So 8 inches for 1 mile, 32 inches in 2 miles, 16.6 feet with 5 miles, so on and so forth. So what I did is I shot this pier, which is in Daytona Beach, Florida, and as you can see, between the water and the walkway of the pier is about 12 to 16 feet based on the height of the people and the railing. So I started at Granada, which is 4.92 miles away, and I shot this, and based on that distance and the formula, there should be 16 feet of curvature. But obviously you can still see the entire gap under the walkway there between that and the water. So in addition to that, behind that pier is actually a lighthouse, which you can see right above the pier. You can see the light. That is 16 miles away from my location, and I shot that lighthouse. Now that lighthouse is 175 feet tall, and the curvature from 16 miles away should be 170 feet. You can clearly see about the entire lighthouse beyond that pier. So like I said, there should be 170 feet of curvature, but there's none. And those hotels there are even further. Those are in New Smyrna, which is 20 miles. If NASA is right, and there is, and we do live on a ball, they're going to have to make up that curvature. If it's not in the 20 miles I'm shooting, well then that means it's got to be made up further on down the line. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we live on this ball and then say, oh, you can't detect the curvature. Well, you got to detect it somewhere, because if it's not dropping here, it's going to have to drop even more down the lines in order to make that circle, that ball they say we live on. And it's pretty round. That blue marble they give us is perfectly round.
Lighthouses are one great example. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England, it's 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. Why can you still see it? Another one worth mentioning that people be familiar with is the Statue of Liberty. It stands 326 feet above sea level, and on a clear day can be seen as far as 60 miles away. Now, if the Earth was a globe at the dimensions that they give us, that would put Lady Liberty at an impossible 2,074 feet below the horizon.
No, not one picture of the Earth. Imagine that. 2016, and we still don't have a picture of our home. Thousands of satellites supposedly orbiting the Earth. Why can't we get thousands of pictures? One shot with the whole Earth in it. Let's listen to NASA's very own Robert Simon talk about how we get our fake pictures of Earth.
Last week, scientists at NASA released this. The shot is compiled from data from NASA's VIIRS instrument, which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this, and then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from Space album, which may be one of the most mind-expanding collections of images in human history. Then in 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through, so I just hit Command-Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it has to be. It is photoshopped.
Not having one authentic picture of the Earth alone is a huge red flag. The flat Earth model is a working model. It's by no means definitive due to the nature of this massive cover-up. For the past 500 years, we've been completely buying into the Copernicus heliocentric model. But what we do know about the flat Earth is based on the azimuthal equidistant map that seems to be working out. This map goes as far back as the year 1000 and possibly earlier, now used as an official map by the U.S. Geological Survey and also as the official logo for the United Nations. Is this our real home being hidden from us in plain sight? I think it is. The first thing a lot of people say is, where's the edge? Well, look at this map where Antarctica is a 360-degree ice barrier that holds the water in. These ice walls are real, and they stand 150 feet above the surface of the water. Then you need to understand that there is no independent access to Antarctica. Average people can only go there on a guided tour. It has no towns, no cities, and no permanent residences. What's past the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by 12 nations and more later on, states that Antarctica is for peaceful purposes only. No military activities, just scientific research and government exploration. Expeditions by any party must be discussed in advance. It's the longest and most successful treaty between nations. The treaty also states that there are ships, stations, and equipment to ensure compliance of the treaty. Sounds like military activity to me. Anyway, so this azimuthal equidistant map appears to be correct for the most part. Over the centuries, there's been other maps that look pretty close to it as well. Let's look at an interesting story that was recently in the news that supports this flat map. A woman gave birth on a flight from Bali to Los Angeles, so the flight made an emergency landing in Alaska. Here's what it would look like on a globe. Now, here's what it would look like on a flat Earth. Which one makes more sense? Exactly. A big issue I was having with the flat Earth for the longest time was the sunrise and sunsets. I realized that it was a perspective issue. First, you must understand that the sun is not 93 million miles away. If it was, we would never see anything like this here. This is concentrated because it's closer. It's much more probable that the sun is only a few thousand miles away and that it's the same size as the moon. Once you comprehend this, all of a sudden, solar eclipses make sense. Sun is close, which gives it the ability to spotlight the area that it's over, and when it leaves your view, due to perspective, it takes the light with it. There is a generous amount of light where the sun is at, but since it's so close, it doesn't spread its light like it would if it were bigger and further. The sun circumnavigates the Earth like a huge clockwork. Sometimes that takes a while to sink in. Alright, let's talk about the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect states that when a moving object leaves the ground, the Earth continues to rotate, meaning that when shooting a gun at a certain distance, the bullet would be a little off due to the Earth's rotation. If that's the case, then airplanes would have to account for the Coriolis effect, but they don't. This is only a few things that work better on a flat, motionless Earth. Do you need 100 excuses as to why you're not feeling any motion or seeing any curvature? Are those excuses easier to believe? Or is it easier to use Occam's razor and go with what our senses are telling us? The Earth is flat and not spinning. This one is a touchy subject. This whole fucking video is a touchy subject. So anyway, this one's hard to get across to people big time. But outer space is up for debate. Space programs are compartmentalized, and most astronauts are Freemasons that have to swear an oath of secrecy when dealing with the so-called missions. The thing is that there is so much footage of NASA and other space agencies making mistakes. Sometimes we could see bubbles in the spacewalks. Sometimes we could see harnesses and wires on the people in the International Space Station. The permed hair that moves nothing like it would in zero gravity. These are huge red flags, not to mention the Van Allen radiation belt. The Van Allen radiation belt is a layer of energetic charged particles that is held in place around a magnetized planet such as Earth by the planet's magnetic field. Sounds kind of like a dome if there is one. Oddly enough, one of NASA's employees admitted that this radiation belt needs to be figured out before humans could pass through it. Listen closely.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Let's talk about satellites. We've already discussed how there are no pictures of the Earth. So, are satellites even real? Not likely. Ground towers are built all over the world and are more than adequate to relay our television, radio, and cell phone service.
All GPS is done through land-based towers, and things like Google Earth are taken with high-altitude planes, and most of them are just done with cars on street level. Did you know that satellites were actually invented by Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author?
I didn't know that.
They shortly became science fact after that. The geostationary satellite, look it up. It was created by a science fiction author. And then within a decade, NASA claims to have sent a real one up there, and ever since then, that's where we get all our communications from.
So satellites were real. We would constantly hear stories of them being hit by meteors or comets, and that doesn't happen. No one's ever lost their direct TV feed during the Perseids meteor shower because one of the meteors knocked out one of the satellites. It doesn't happen, it's never happened, and it won't happen. And that, to me, tells me there is no satellites. You would constantly be worried about them, and you would constantly hear about them having something happen, and it's so rare that you hear that.
So you may or may not have heard the term cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when new information challenges your beliefs and you just can't let go.
Really, the evidence shows me that it's flat and stationary. There's much more evidence based on just pure analysis that it's flat and stationary.
We're in the Pearl of Great Price in Moses, chapter 2, the corresponding verse there to what we read earlier about the creation of the sun, the moon, and the stars. So it says, "And I, God, made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. The greater light was the sun, and the lesser light was the moon, and the stars also were made even according to my word." Okay? It doesn't give a time frame on the stars, but that kind of makes it sound like they were made during the same time frame. Okay, now we're still in the Pearl of Great Price, but we're in the book of Abraham. At the corresponding activities here, and it's talking about the gods organizing things. And it says, "And the gods organized the lights in the expanse of the heaven, and caused them to divide the day from the night, and organized them to be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years, and organized them to be for lights in the expanse of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And the gods organized the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. With the lesser light they set the stars also." With the lesser light they set the stars also. So that sounds like the stars, the trillions of stars, at least that's what the scientists, astronomers tell us we have, are like, dressing on the cake. They're a little extra. Trillions of stars were set there with the moon for the benefit of the earth. "And the gods set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to cause to divide the light from the darkness. And the gods watched those things which they had ordered until they obeyed. And it came to pass, it was from the evening till the morning that it was night, from the morning till evening it was day, and it was the fourth time." And then they got things going with the waters. Okay, so that's a little different, isn't it? That's a little different. But it all sounds like, yeah, the stars are frosting on the cake. Trillions of stars, if the astronomers are telling us correctly. Trillions of stars based on this Earth to give light to it. As, what, added decoration? And they were put there with the moon. And the lesser light to rule the night. With the lesser light, they set the stars also. Well, last I checked, the stars are supposedly always there, and you can just see them when it's dark, because they show up, since the sunlight isn't making them invisible. Well, anyway, that's what we've got there. I really don't think that makes a great deal of sense, to create trillions of stars based on this one Earth. We read in the Doctrines and Covenants, section 76, we're going to read something really different to blow this up now. Okay, we're in section 76 of the Doctrines and Covenants. Verse 23 says, "For behold, we saw him even on the right hand of God, and we heard the voice bearing record that he is the only begotten of the Father." Next verse. "That by him and through him and of him the worlds are and were created, and the inhabitants thereof are begotten sons and daughters unto God." Wow. So that's got a couple interesting points. Verse 24 contradicts verse 23. Verse 23 says that, the Son, that Jesus is the only begotten of the Father. And then verse 24 says that all the space aliens are begotten sons and daughters unto God on all these other worlds, the inhabitants of these other worlds. By him and through him the worlds are and were created, and the inhabitants thereof are begotten sons and daughters unto God. You just said that Jesus was the only begotten. Well, besides the begotten business, which is kind of weird, we've got other worlds being created in addition to all those stars that were supposedly just created as decoration for the sky for this world during the fourth day of the creation of this Earth. And now we've got everything else in space, at least all the stars, created, during the fourth day of the creation of this one world. And now here it says we've got all these other worlds populated with begotten sons and daughters of God. So it's a little convoluted at this point. We're back in Abraham. We are in chapter 3. "And I, Abraham, had the Urim and Thummim, which the Lord my God had given unto me in Ur of the Chaldees. And I saw the stars, that they were very great, and that one of them was nearest unto the throne of God. And there were many great ones which were near unto it." So a star cluster. "And the Lord said unto me, These are the governing ones, and the name of the great one is Kolob, because it is near unto me. For I am the Lord thy God. I have set this one to govern all those which belong to the same order as that upon which thou standest. And the Lord said unto me by the Urim and Thummim that Kolob was after the manner of the Lord according to its times and seasons in the revolutions thereof, that one revolution was a day unto the Lord after his manner of reckoning, it being 1,000 years according to the time appointed unto that whereon thou standest. This is the reckoning of the Lord's time according to the reckoning of Kolob." So he goes along with what we've got in 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8 on the time of the Lord. "The Lord said unto me, The planet which is the lesser light, lesser than that which is to rule the day, even the night, is above or greater than that upon which thou standest in point of reckoning, for it moveth in order more slow." Maybe the Lord meant more slowly, and his grammar was a little rough there. "This is in order because it standeth above the earth upon which thou standest." Above the earth, that's why. "Therefore the reckoning of its time is not so many as to its number of days and of months and of years. And the Lord said unto me, Now Abraham, these two facts exist. Behold, thine eyes have seen it, and it is given unto thee to know the times and reckoning, and the time and the set time of the earth upon which thou standest, and the set time of the greater light which is to rule the day, and the set time of the lesser light which is to rule the night." Anyway, They turn more slowly as you get closer to Kolob, apparently. Now we're going to check out one of the facsimiles, which tells us something rather interesting. Looking here, interpretations of figure 5 in the facsimile number 2, it says this figure is called an Egyptian Enish Goon Dosh. This is one of the governing planets also, and it is said by the Egyptians to be the sun, and to borrow its light from Kolob through the medium of Vanrash, which is the grand key, or in other words, the governing power, which governs 15 other fixed planets or stars, as also Floes, or the moon. Pardon my pronunciations if they're wrong. I'm not an Egyptian expert. The Earth and the Sun in their annual revolutions, which governs 15 other fixed planets or stars, as also the Moon, the Earth, and the Sun in their annual revolutions. This planet receives its power through the medium of Ki Flossis, or Hakokaubium. The stars represented by numbers 22 and 23 receiving light from the revolutions of Kolob. Receiving light, the stars represented by these numbers, receiving light from the revolutions of Kolob. Okay. And we got keywords of the priesthood and things like that that sound like Royal Arch Freemasonry, but I'm not going to get into that at this moment anyway. Wow, so the sun gets its light. The sun, and is said by the Egyptians to be the sun, and to borrow its light from Kolob through the medium of this weird word, which is the grand key, or in other words, the governing power. Okay, the sun borrows its light from Kolob through the governing power. And this planet, the Earth and the Sun in their annual revolutions, this planet receives its power through some other weird name. And the stars represented by certain numbers receive their light from the revolutions of Kolob. Now that's weird science, huh? Okay. So what sounds weirder? This or the flat Earth, where we have to bend light or something in order to see things that would be beyond sight if the Earth actually has the curvature that we're told that it does. If it's the size that it is and it's a globe, then the movie that I looked a little bit at shows that you can't look in a straight line at something that's below your horizon and see it, and it doesn't take very far, a great distance to do that. If you look at the math that's involved, we shouldn't be able to see things. If light curves, then why can't we just see them all the way around the globe? Well, anyhow, great things to think about, huh? So this is what you're supposed to believe if you're LDS, what we're looking at here. The sun gets its light through the revolutions of Kolob, or these other ones do. The sun gets its light through the grand key, borrowing its light from Kolob through the medium of Ke Vanrash, which is the grand key, or governing power, which governs 15 other fixed planets, including the moon and the Earth and the sun. In their annual revolutions, this planet receives its power through the medium of Cleflosius, or something, or how cocoa beams, and the sun. The stars represented by certain numbers receive their light from the revolutions of Kolob. Light from revolutions? I thought it was from nuclear fission. Well, anyway, I think I'll take a break. If I end it here, don't forget to like and subscribe and get into the channel for other things with lots of documentation on very interesting subjects. You're a Mormon and you believe weird things. Then again, the people in the Bible believe what's in Genesis. Everything, the rest of the universe created on the fourth day. So, and they seem to think it was all done in 6 days. If we get into nothing died before Adam left the garden, that's another interesting subject. There's so much in Genesis that is weird to science and contradicts history. like the Great Flood, for instance. God forgot to tell the Egyptians that they got washed away, as he also forgot to tell the Native Americans, the Babylonians, the Chinese, and some other civilizations that have historical records that we'll go over. Thanks for liking and subscribing. I'll look forward to hearing your comments.